bring in Alan Dershowitz, who's agreed to defend me from deportation. Very kind of you, Alan. You defended John Lennon, no less. Interesting encounter there with Alex Jones. He's the guy behind this petition to have me deported. He's really one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about the lack of gun control in America. He's a man that owns 50 weapons. He has a sort of pathological view about it. He seems unhinged to me. The irony of these gun rights guys saying to me that I'm rude to them won't be lost on my regular viewers, I'm sure. I try to stay calm, and really there's no other way of dealing with him, because he's just a sort of ranting guy who doesn't want anybody to grab his guns, but no sense of awareness about the wider issue of a particular type of weapon being used to commit these mass outrages.
Well, we lawyers refer to people like that not as witnesses, but as exhibits. He was an exhibit, like a piece of evidence. You just see him speaking, and you say to yourself, I don't want that man to have a gun. I wouldn't feel comfortable having an argument with him in his home where he had access to his 50 weapons. And if he got really mad at something I said, or if I disputed his contentions, or I told him he was lying about the FBI statistics, and that he was lying about the claim more guns equal less crime, I would be worried he would grab for his semi-automatic and try to resolve it.
What really would concern me about somebody like him is the amount of influence he has, a growing influence. As he boasted, he's got millions of people listening to him. Some of his YouTube rants have got tens of millions of people watching them. And he foments this fear of a tyrannical regime, and that is why everyone in America needs to be armed with AR-15s. And it's the stuff of nonsense, isn't it? I mean,
well, it's much more dangerous than nonsense. I mean, he was essentially comparing President Bush to Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
He was saying that somebody, the criminal elements within our banks, the Bloombergs, the national banks.
Here's the point, you can't dismiss him as just a crackpot, because millions of Americans tune into him now on a daily basis and believe what he says.
Let me tell you,
that is why, to me, he's a very relevant guest here, and he perfectly exemplifies the problem.
But the reason you perform such a great service by having him on is he usually preaches to his own little paranoid choir. People who listen to him are either listening to him for entertainment purposes, the way I sometimes listen to Rush Limbaugh, or because they really believe it. Now, you expose
we had a little exchange, actually,
to a general audience.
This is a little exchange that happened just right at the end here, which others haven't seen yet.
And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? That's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
You see, when you have this debate on the East Coast, or even the West Coast, I find that a lot of Americans come up to me and they're totally behind what I'm trying to do, which is a very specific thing. It's not about taking away his right to defend himself or his family at home, or to grab anybody's guns other than these military-style assault weapons. But he doesn't want to hear any of the nuances of the debate. He couldn't tell me how many people get murdered by guns.
Because he doesn't want to hear the other side of the story.
Because he doesn't want to hear the answer. He knows it's very, very low. He doesn't want to hear it.
And one thing I would suggest is it's time for us, you know, everybody hates commissions, but it's time for us to have a commission of 10 great distinguished scientists to put the lie to this notion that more guns, less crime. I know the statistics, I know the FBI data, I teach it, but most Americans believe the NRA propaganda. The NRA buys scholars.
And
they buy statistics, and it's just wrong.
Lies.
It's total lies.
It is total lies. Britain has strong gun control, for example, and averages 35 gun murders a year. America has very lax gun control and has 11,000. Britain is about a fifth of the size of America. I can do simple maths. Japan has the toughest gun control in the world. They have 2 or 3 murders a year. Australia had a massacre in the 90s. They brought in a ban on all main high-powered guns and assault rifles and so on. They've had no mass shooting since. This is not rocket science. It is there to be had. The problem is that the NRA And I'm sure that Mr. Jones is a big fan of theirs and probably helps them.
Oh, he probably thinks they're way, way, way too much part of the establishment.
Right,
He's way,
problem,
way to the
Alan,
right
in this
of the
country
NRA.
is the political power the NRA now wield means that politicians are too cowed to say anything. I mean, I had people say to me, "You're so brave." What is brave about wanting to stop 20 more children getting murdered?
I don't think you're right about that. I don't think it's the NRA power. I think it's people like us, and not the two of us, but Americans who care about guns aren't doing enough to make our case to the public.
But why not?
Because we think it's their issue. We've given that issue over to them because they have lobbyists, they pay money. But in the end, the people determine the outcome. And it's wrong, and it's racist, and it's bigoted to say that guns are quintessentially American. They may represent a part of America, but my grandparents who came over from Poland and live in Brooklyn, New York, are just as much Americans. People who came over from Ireland, people who came over from Italy, we're just as much Americans if we live on the coasts. And we have a right to define the America that we want to live in, and we have the obligation to win politically, to vote for people to put gun control as a high priority. They put it as a #1 priority. We who favor gun control put it as a 16th or 17th priority. So it's our fault, not the NRA's fault.
And the important thing of getting people like Alex Jones on this show is to hear him actually say that he believed President Bush, the American administration under him, were responsible for 9/11, and that is why he wants Americans armed to defend themselves against that kind of murderous tyranny. And it's the most dangerous rhetoric I have heard in a very long time.
But it's very important that he be exposed on your show, because decent Americans don't want to be associated with that kind of paranoid view of American history. They don't want to believe that our government is capable of engaging in the kind of tyranny that he fears. You know, government does a great deal of good for people. Yes, there are reasons to constrain government. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights. Justice Scalia, who wrote the opinion, said very clearly the Second Amendment permits for reasonable regulation, for prevention of people like him from getting guns, for prevention of crazy people with long records, criminal records from getting guns. We have to do more to fulfill what the real meaning of the Second Amendment is: reasonable access to guns for self-protection and for hunting. And there's no room in America for these semi-automatic, automatic, and other kinds of weapons that are simply designed to create mass havoc.
See, I believe that an increasing majority of Americans do not agree with the likes of Alex Jones. I think they realize a tipping point has been reached. When you have a movie theater shot up and then a school, an elementary school, enough is enough. And they mustn't let the agenda be driven by people like him.
And when the NRA gets up and says the solution to it is to arm teachers in elementary schools and to give kids guns and to load our
society
up with
Wild West.
Guns,
it's lunacy.
We don't want to live in that
Alan,
America.
thank you so much for coming in. When we come back, a man who truly does believe the solution to gun violence is yet more guns, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, on why he wants armed volunteers outside schools.